Most people think getting out of debt is all about math. Higher interest? Pay that first. Lower balance? Ignore it. Simple, right? But here's the uncomfortable truth. If money was purely logical, most people wouldn't be in debt in the first place. The real battle isn't happening in your bank account. It's happening in your mind. And until you understand that, even the perfect strategy can fail. So here's a question for you. If you had multiple debts right now, which one would you pay first? The smallest one to feel quick progress? Or the one with the highest interest to save the most money? Comment below with your answer, because by the end of this video, you might completely change your mind. Now, when it comes to paying off debt, there are two powerful strategies that dominate this conversation. One is backed heavily by psychology and made famous by Dave Sir. The second approach focuses purely on mathematical efficiency, but the journey they create feels very different. Let's start with the first approach, the one that focuses on momentum over logic. Imagine this. You have 3 different debts: a credit card with a balance of $1,200, a personal loan of $2,500, and a car loan of $8,000. Now, most people instinctively look at interest rates and start calculating what saves the most money. But this method ignores all of that. Instead, it tells you to line up your debts from smallest to largest, no matter what the interest rate is. And then you attack the smallest one first with everything you've got, while making only the minimum payments on the others. At first, this might sound irrational. Why would you ignore a high-interest debt? But here's where things get interesting. When you eliminate that smallest debt, something powerful happens. You don't just reduce your balance, you create a psychological win, a visible result. Think about it like going to the gym after a long break. You don't start by lifting the heaviest weights or running the fastest sprints. You start small. You build confidence. You create consistency. Because once you see progress, you're far more likely to continue. That's exactly how this method works. Every time you eliminate a debt, your confidence grows. Your motivation increases. And even more importantly, the payment that was covering your first debt now gets redirected toward the next balance. So instead of paying, let's say, $200 on one debt, you might now be putting $350 toward the next. Then $500. Then $700. And suddenly your payments start gaining momentum, like a snowball rolling downhill. That's why it's called the debt snowball. Now here's something a lot of people overlook. This method isn't designed to be mathematically perfect. It's designed to keep you in the game long enough to actually win. Because the biggest mistake people make isn't choosing the wrong strategy, it's quitting halfway through. And this approach is incredibly effective at preventing that. But let's shift perspectives for a moment. What if instead of focusing on motivation, you focused purely on efficiency? What if your only goal was to minimize the total amount of interest you pay over time? This is where the second method comes in, and it takes a completely different approach. Instead of organizing your debts by balance, you organize them by interest rate, highest to lowest. So in the same example, if your credit card has a 20% interest rate, your personal loan is at 10%, and your car loan is at 5%, you would attack the credit card first, even if it's not the smallest balance. The logic here is simple. High-interest debt is costing you the most money every single day you carry it. So the faster you eliminate it, the more money you save in the long run. And mathematically, this method is unbeatable. But here's where things get a little uncomfortable again. Because while this approach saves you more money on paper, it doesn't always feel rewarding in the short term. Imagine putting all your effort into a large, high-interest debt and seeing almost no visible progress for months. But for others, it becomes frustrating. And frustration leads to inconsistency. Which brings us back to the real question. What matters more? Saving the most money or staying motivated long enough to actually finish the journey? Because at the end of the day, both methods work. Both can successfully get you out of debt. But only one will work for you, depending on how you think, how you behave, and how you handle progress. Now let's move beyond theory and step into a real-world scenario where these two strategies start to separate in a very clear way. Imagine someone dealing with multiple debts at the same time. A credit card balance of $1,200 with a painful 21% interest rate. Another credit card with $2,000 at around 18%. A car loan sitting at $14,000 with a 4.7% rate. And student loans of roughly $23,000 at 6.5%. In total, that's over $40,000 in debt. Now let's say this person has taken control of their finances. They've created a budget, tracked their spending, and figured out that they can consistently put $1,000 every single month toward eliminating this debt. This is where things get interesting. If they follow the debt snowball method, they'll start by attacking the smallest balance first, the $1,200 credit card, while making minimum payments on everything else. Once that's gone, they move to the $2,000 credit card, then the next and the next. And over time, something powerful builds, momentum. Each debt disappears one by one. The number of accounts shrinks. The feeling of progress becomes real. And that $1,000 payment starts hitting fewer targets with more force. Now let's compare that with the debt avalanche method. Instead of focusing on balances, this person targets the highest interest rate first. That means the 21% credit card gets all the extra money immediately, followed by the 18% card, then the student loan, and finally the car loan. From a purely mathematical perspective, this is the smarter move, because every extra dollar going toward that high-interest debt is saving money that would otherwise be lost over time. And when you actually run the numbers, the difference becomes clear. Using the snowball method, this person might end up paying around $6,200 before becoming debt-free. But using the avalanche method, that number drops to roughly $5,300. That's a difference of about $900. Same income, same debt, same monthly pay saved. And this is the moment where most people think the debate is over. Obviously, the avalanche method is better. But not so fast. Because here's the part most people don't talk about. That $900 only matters if you actually stick with the plan until the end. If someone starts with the avalanche method, but loses motivation halfway through because progress feels slow, and then stops making extra payments, they don't save $900. They lose far more than that. This is why personal finance is never just about numbers. It's about behavior. They create belief. And that belief keeps the system going long enough to reach the finish line. On the other hand, for someone who is disciplined, patient, and focused purely on efficiency, the avalanche method becomes incredibly powerful. It rewards consistency with maximum savings and faster long-term results. So instead of asking, which method will I actually stick to? Because the best strategy isn't the one that looks perfect on paper. It's the one you can follow, even on the days when motivation is low, progress feels slow, and giving up seems easier. And if you really think about it, that's the deeper lesson behind all of this. Getting out of debt isn't just about eliminating numbers. It's about changing habits. It's about building discipline. It's about proving to yourself that you can take control of your financial life, one decision at a time. Because once you do that, everything else becomes easier. Saving becomes easier, investing becomes easier, and building real wealth becomes possible. So whether you choose the snowball or the avalanche, the goal remains the same. Consistency over perfection, progress over excuses, and action over overthinking. If this video helped you see debt in a new way, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because on this channel, we break down money in a way that actually makes sense. And more importantly, how helps you take action.